Thank you very much. My name is Deniz Appelbaum. You can call me Professor Deniz or Deniz, and Professor John Bird is here also, Professor Cohen. She's all both from Rutgers University. We do a lot of work in the continuous document reporting laboratory using IDEA, ACL, and other types of software. We do a lot of testing and analytics work. But this is a very helpful tool that's used predominantly by internal audit functions in companies, but also by external audit firms increasingly over time. They're using it for very general tests, for example, three-way matches or validation of different data sets. And they're looking to expand different ways to use analytics within the audit engagement. So when you're on the job market, after using this tool in their class and learning about basic idea, you can say that you understand basic idea and makes you stand out as a job candidate in the job market. So this is a very useful exercise. Let's sort of help you, sort of help internalize the types of audit tests and assertion tests we talk about in audit class. The auditing may seem to be very abstract sometimes. There's a lot of regulations, a lot of theory, a lot of talk about auditor judgment. What does that really mean? So you'll see, like we do some testing here, where the IDEA tool will help you see where the situation might lie in the data, but then it's up to your judgment to decide, like, well, I really should look at this further or more closely. So the IDEA sort of makes it, enhances your work as an auditor. It enables you to actually dive in deeper and more quickly and efficiently into the data to see where the problems may lie in the data or the transactions of the company. So you might have different tasks involved, depending on whether you're an external auditor or an internal auditor. For example, an internal auditor may be doing more fraud or fraud type work as opposed to an external auditor. But it doesn't mean that the tests are not appropriate for either side. So all of you have loaded up the accounts payable data, is that correct? Yeah. You all should have a page that looks like this, right? If you have the accounts payable open. Have you been working a lot of IDEA based on in the workbook so far, or have you conducted any tests or anything? No? Okay. So we will get started with that. We'll do a basic profile overview of the data. I've got my microphone on, right? Oh. There we go. So you'll find, like nowadays, if you go to work at an audit firm, particularly one of the large or big four or even the big eight, they're going to ask you whether you know some of these types of languages, or you're going to be required to work with this in your engagement, for the most part. Ones that the big four that we're familiar with, they all use this on the audit engagement, at least on certain tests. So if you can go on the market and you can say that you've learned the basic ideas and tests, or basic functionalities of audit command language or automation software that will be helpful in the market, besides knowing Excel to access the database. Although this can be used to access all different types of data, so it's a very handy tool to use in the market. Yes.
So just before we get started, just looking at this data that's up now, does anything strike you as unusual if we just look at what's up there?
Yeah, I think the PE's names, either Crook or forecast.
A lot of this isn't manufactured data, right? It's simulated data, yeah.
But no, that's a good point, right? So you see, especially the data that, names that have, I guess someone could have the last name Cash. It was Johnny Cash, right?
Yeah.
Oh, I might be dating myself, for sure. Or Cash Company, Cash for Us. So those would be unusual. Now, this is just a snapshot of the screen, but there are 999 accounts payable transactions, and so you wouldn't want to have to scroll through 999 transactions. That's not efficient at all.
Right.
So, what Deniz which is going to show you is how we use IDEA, how auditors can use IDEA and try to focus their attention on, specific transactions or events.
Yeah, for example, in transaction number 29, you see someone's first name, Ray. Is that typical for a business to address a check, to somebody named Ray, their last name? It's very odd. So, there's a lot of anomalies in this data. Obviously, someone's really off. I think a lot of fraud would not be this so blatant. You know, so usually it's more subtle than this. So, and that's why we do these other kinds of tests we'll be doing later, because it's also obvious to the names, for example. So most fraudsters are very clever in that regard. So you have to try to sort of agree with other types of tests within the data as to whether this might stick out to you that there's going to be examined further.
Right, so what Denise is going to show you as we go forward is you're going to combine some of these. Like, so what you're essentially looking for, at least with the test that we're going to do today, are patterns that would suggest that there's something that might not be correct, or that just it seems like it's a higher level risk, those transactions might look riskier. So you're looking for patterns or anomalies in the data. So Denise is going to go through some of those tests.
So for those of you who have I have this as a notebook up here, but you might want to access your electronic version of your workbook, because some of the commands that we go into later is maybe hard to read up on the screen. But basically, and this is also a very good workbook in terms of for future lessons, whatever we don't cover today, because it's, plus I'll show you also, I'll show you right now actually, if you go to File, on the top here, you click on Help, in the case where Idea Help, there's a nice guideline here, an idea about anything you want to find out about, whether it's auditing of IDEA, managing your files, doing the audit history, importing the data, so anything that you don't understand from this workbook here, or from what we covered today, or in your project, you can look on into here in this directory. So, for example, if we go to auditing with IDEA, we could see here they're talking about identify exceptional items, for example, and gives you ideas of how that could be broken down with extraction tasks. Because we're going to go at length, we're going to do a lot of work with extraction because that's your basic audit test, your basic functionality and idea that helps you navigate and write specific tests for specific clients. Performing analyses, for example, there's a function here. This will be doing next, is stratification. So that's where we're looking to see, we're trying to do a high-level summary of trends within the data. So where is it where most of the transactions lie? Or what amounts, like the $0 to $10,000, or is it between $70,000 and $80,000? And why that might be interesting is because let's say you have a cutoff limit of $80,000, and let's say any checks over $80,000 need to have supervisor signature. So maybe you want to look and see all the checks that are just under $80,000 instead of $80,000. See if there's unusual number. Maybe they're trying to navigate having to get a signature from a manager or something. So, or the ones right above. So you want to check to see if there's some that are not getting the signatures. Then we can also check calculations. Okay, so that's where you do field statistics, which I think you guys have already done, right? Cross-matching between systems. So this is like cross-matching across databases. So you would join databases with a common identifier or common field. We're going to test for gaps, duplicates, which we should be able to get to today, hopefully. And the last one, which we'll cover real shortly later today, is sampling. But the idea of sampling is that you have all these 999 transactions. Well, you can't audit or look at all these in detail. Detailed examination, you're pulling out actual records of things. You're looking to find paperwork behind it. You're cross-checking, make sure that the pricing on that particular particular purchase order matches the amount that was quoted, that was matches the amount that was on the invoice that was from the client, for example. So all this is a part of your audit testing, and you don't have time to do all that kind of work. So you're going to eventually narrow that down to a smaller data set to examine. So the first thing I want to do is look at a general, just see how the data lies within the amounts, because these are all checks. So accounts payable, these are all checks that are being written to suppliers. Okay, so we want to look to see how the check amounts lie within relation to one another, what the trend of the data is. So we're going to do a stratification, but if you're an idea, but make sure your accounts payable table is open, and as you know, you can make sure this data is checked off here, so everyone should have the same view that I have here. Is everyone here on the same view?
And if you want to follow in your workbook, start at page 120.
Yeah, 120 is where you start. So then also on the top tab here, you have either home. This is like your directory here. We have data, which is basically how we would organize this data set if we wanted to. And our big one here is analysis. As you can see, we have all kinds of nice extraction processes here. We can rerun a task. We have exploration of data, which is what we would do here for gap detection or vector's law or duplicate keys or statistics. Then we're categorize the data now with a stratification. So we click on stratification. We come up with a stratification key box, okay? Now we're going to be fielding stratified will be amount, okay? And we're going to total amount, field total on the amount. I'm going to make sure these two are clicked off, okay? And it says do not group, so don't worry about that right now. 10,000 would be the increment amount, okay? Sometimes you could, if you wanted to have a criteria, you could fill that in with the equation editor. You click that little link. If you want to put some kind of criteria for the stratification, you can enter it there. We don't need to do that for this particular task. The book here tells you to title it stratification results. I'm just going to put on stratification 6 because I'm running this test a lot and I can't, if I run the same name, it'll overload. So you would want to make sure you put in stratification results here. This is what they're asking for in the book. Okay, so so what we're going to do first, we have a lower limit here. We make sure upper limit. We click on that, and it gives you the range of $10,000. Then we click on this and bring it all the way down for 10 rows. It gives us like the initial range between $0 and $100,000. So these are increments of $10,000. So we're going to look at the data in these increments of these fields, okay? Then what do we do about the rest of the data? We know we have, you don't notice it going forward, but they do have a few, let's say there's a few transactions that are close to $200,000. We don't want to have all these fields that are zeros in there. So what we may do is actually increase the increment amount. They can make it 50,000 to say. So in that case, let's add like another $100,000 worth of stratification. We're going to have two fields of 100 to 150,000, 150,000, 200,000. So now we've covered everything from $100 to $150,000 plus the additional previous 10.
Is everybody okay with that so far?
Yes.
I typed in 50,000 for the increment, but it didn't update.
Well, you have to click on this 11,
Okay.
and then just drag it down to 12. Does it work for you now?
Yeah.
Okay, so make sure the key first is like you have the increment amount up here. Make sure you define the upper and the lower limit, which is already given to you is 0, and the upper limit, which would be 10,000. Once you click on it, you just drag it down to your. They're saying here in this exercise the 10 increments, so it would be down to 100,000, and then we added the 11 and 12 and 50,000. Okay. Is everybody on the same page? Okay, so then we click OK. And this is what we get. This is our new table here. Okay, this is gives you an idea with the data, how it lies. We have 280 transactions that are less than $10,000. We have 149 that are between 10 and 20,000. 116 between 20 and 30. 82 between 30 and 40. 78, in the next range. So you can see they're incrementally getting fewer in number the larger they are. And we have a couple of outliers here, there's 1 and 2, right? Now, if you go all the way to the top corner over here to the under accounts payable, we see the little, we can display the results in a customizable graph or a grid. So we can click on that. Okay, so we have now, we can see, visualize the data, what it looks like, and it's an idea of, high-level view. So, for example, you may have to, let's say you have more stratification in this, or a larger field in this. So, management or distributed users may want to see a visualization presentation on this first, as opposed to showing a chart, or a graph, a table. Okay, so it's very handy in terms of presentation of information to have visualization. And we could also, in here, we could change the formats if we wanted to. There's a little gallery here, just for your own edification. So it'll highlight the area, like if you want to make it this way, we can make it go that direction. There's different formats we can use here, whatever you prefer. The ones that are applicable will be highlighted. We can also go to this palette next to it and change the colors. If you want to change this color, we have a different color format here. So there's all kinds, you can be very creative with how you present the results. We want to make it light. This is the blue again. We can also do 3D, so that gives it an interesting three-dimensional look. So these are all, ways to play around with the results. So the professor should see the same tables from everybody, right? You should be
Looks
creative with the results. It's your time to have individuality and creativity. So, and then of course we can also click on it here and highlight the strata. So we run the strata here, so 280 here. You left click on it. You can either extract the records, which will pull it to a totally different table. If we want to create a different table with that, we can display the records, or we can display field statistics. So I think the next slide has to do with field statistics. So here we have, you can see the different types of amounts, for example, and as you can see here, we have the positive results. We have some zeros, so it's weird that we have the amounts of checks without amounts. This thing's very interesting, or some that are multiple paydays, so some multiple checks are on the same payday. So that's just observation of that data. We could look at, I'm curious about this one here, because this sort of sticks out, this 8 strata here. Sort of we have a nice little trend here, which you'll see it sort of follows Benford's law diagram until we get to that. We have this one here that sort of sticks out a little bit. So if we highlight on him, we can display those statistics. So this is very interesting here. Look at these checks here. So you see that they fall within the range here. But again, we have an interesting situation with the amounts also. Payday. So you want to look at every range of every strata to see what kind of data you're dealing with. And again, it gives you a high-level view of how the data is lying within this particular data set.
And so, and I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
So in analyzing this data, right, you already have background about your client. You've already gone through your audit risk assessment. You've done your planning, so you looked at the history, what kinds of transactions they engage in. You know what dollar limits. So for example, the last two are very high. Maybe for your client that you're auditing, that it's unusual to have transactions or payments to a client in that particular range of payments. So you might want to look at those further. So when you're deciding on what you look at or how much further you drill down on this information, it's really going to be driven by that audit planning process that you've gone through in that audit risk assessment, because that's where you gather information to figure out, or at least identify where the riskier transactions could occur, the riskier areas of the audit are. So you're not doing this in a vacuum, right? It's based on your planning and risk assessment process.
So the example like we discussed earlier about the signatures of the management. So let's say the rule in the company is that you have anything over $80,000 should have management sign off on the check, right? You have to make sure that they signed off on the table paperwork. So you can look and see whether you pull all those invoices or all those transactions from 9 on, right, and see whether they actually have signatures or a sign off by management. If that was the rule of the company. Or let's say there was anything over $100,000, so it'd be double checked. But let's say you had like a cutoff of maybe they can't spend over a certain amount of money, or they can't write a check over a certain amount, then that would be also indicative, maybe something to look at further. Why does that check exist? And this is just a generic situation. So the idea is that there's some outliers here. We have 3 transactions which are way beyond the usual amount that don't fit in with the rest of the data really. So those would be areas we want to look at further. You may not see that so easily with just eyeballing the set. You can say, well, why can't I see that with this regular data? But looking at it, that's a lot of data to look at. So if you're scrolling down the whole thing here, it's row after row after row. And we were talking about it earlier in class. Professor Helen remembers what she was doing auditing. I've worked on a project not too long ago where this large multinational corporation, everybody uses their products. They make personal consumer goods, toilet paper, diapers, dog food, shampoo, everything you can think of. Everyone uses it, almost all their items every day. And, but they still had, the way they were finding out about procurement card fraud, which is procurement cards are credit cards used by employees to purchase maintenance, repairs, operations, like office supplies. And they were still eyeballed, the auditor was still eyeballing all this data every month because that's the only way they could test for it. So 55,000 rows of data, 200 different types of variables she had to look at every day, one by one. And even though she was an expert, quote unquote, in her field, like she knew all the basic rules and she knew sort of the, what transactions were legitimate sort of and which ones weren't over time. But still, I mean, she was missing a lot. So when we actually went back and automated all those judgments, like all the rules that she used to examine the data, we found all this additional fraud that they hadn't found before. But this does happen in the field, so you still have people that have to go through and analyze the data one by one like this because the functionality is not built into the automated systems yet. The idea now, they actually have a procurement card function, an application you pay extra for, you can add it in as a script that's basically designed for detecting fraud in credit card transactions. The credit card fraud, particularly procurement cards, is a very, very high fraud area because of the idea that employees being trusted by the company to, it's basically, it could be without any limits, spending the credit card for items that could be personal use, it could be company use. And sometimes it's very hard to see the difference. So that's where the idea or ACL would help you find that particular risk transactions. So anyway, so that, I know we digressed here a little bit, so we'll get back on track. Now we're going to go into the fun function, I call it, because this is where you get to be creative. I mean, this is where, I know there's rules here we're going to follow in this book, but there's a lot of functions you can actually test for individually for all your customers or your clients in this, or depending on what you're trying to test for. And that's the equation function. And so we're still in the analysis tab, right? So make sure that your accounts table is open. You're back to this view, okay? Then we're going under analysis, under extract. So this means we're going to be creating extra, we're pulling data out of this big set. We're going to start focusing on things a little bit more. Like we're going to focus on data that we're interested in based on a test that we want to test for that client. So we're going to hit on direct up here.
And again, for a reference, we're on about page 130.
Yeah, so it's called identify high and unusual payments. Okay, so we're going to be identifying payments that are high. Okay, so like I mentioned before, there might be some rules the customer has about, data over $70,000 payments, for example. Okay, so we hit the direct extraction equation editor, right? And we want us to be able to call this, we want to name this file unusual and high payments. I'm going to put a number on mine because I have this file in my system like multiple times and it doesn't like it, but I have like trying to override it multiple times. So anyway, we're going to create this. We have this file here, so we're going to hit this little, looks like a calculator in the middle, okay? And this is going to open to us, this is our magic box, the equation editor. I'm going to explain a little bit about this before we go into doing the equation. There's a lot of functions that are pre-programmed into this equation editor, which means that you have to use these programs and click on them to enter them into the equation as opposed to typing them in yourself. So in the equation we have, like example, all your characters. Your text has to go within character strings, for example. Anything that's a character will be called a string or a text has to go within quotation marks, okay? So when you have a character or a word you're trying to test for, it has to go within the quotation marks, which you would just click on and drop it into the equation. This is like a separator, a comma separator. Brackets, for example, if you need to, that's how you would drop that in instead of trying to manually type that in.
Right, if you type it in, it won't pull up any exceptions, so you have to use the keys as well as it's case sensitive, as we found out.
Yeah, I think there's an error in one of these scripts here because the actual command is not supposed to be, it said case sensitive, but it turned out it was. Okay, so then we have, again here, the greater than, the less than, these standard ones here, different or not equal to, okay? Plus, minus, multiply, divide. This is and command, so if you have multiple commands, so somebody was asking us in the previous class, We're doing single extractions here, but ideally you could like do like multiple ands and have multiple data that has these multiple violations being pulled into one data set. Or command or not, if you want to put a condition on it. Mod is like if you want to modify the percentage, for example, and this is exponent is displayed as a hat in the equation area. Then we have what all our functions are here. The easy way to find this is to click on all, and it gives you all the different functions that we would look at. For example, like afternoon is one function here, which returns a number indicating whether the specified time is in the morning. So, but you would also find that also in the date and time. So if you know specifically what you're looking for, generally you can find it in the index of character, numeric time, date or time. These are like basic types of tests to be running as objects. For example, like the date and time test to be looking at to see whether the transaction occurred on a certain day, certain time of the day, depending on the test or the rules that you have to, or controls you're looking for. So in this case here, we're looking to see whether the amount, if the transaction, the check, is greater than $70,000 and less than $80,000, or if the amount is larger than $100,000. So I mean, so remember, like in the case here, $80,000 is the limit, I think, of the check signature. So that's why we're looking for the ones that are like just under 80,000, and then that's why we're looking at everything over the amount of 100,000. So we want to enter the equation. So we're going to first look at the amount here. So we're going to pull up the amount. Double click on that. We'll enter that into our equation here. Okay. And we're going to see greater than, right? Greater than, and this is where we could key in something. So 70,000, okay. And amount, again, is less than, actually less than, so in this case here, it's less than 80,000. So make sure it's not less than or equal to, it's less than 80,000, okay? Or amount is greater than 100,000. So this is what it should look like. Now I always hit this validate button to make sure that we have a valid equation. Okay, so that'll make sure that if you keyed in something by accident that should have been dropped into with the prefix functions, it'll come up as like, doesn't read that particular string or there's an issue with it. So it just means that right now this is internally logically within the idea that it's correct. Doesn't mean that that the test itself is correct, because you might maybe have something wrong parameter, but within the idea that it can read that machine language, okay, in a format that it understands. So we click OK, and we click off a check mark here, and this is what our extraction box looks, okay? So then we're going to click OK to run this test, and here's what you should get. We should have 87 records, which we do. See here, very quickly, 87. These are all within the range here. And according to the book here, they should have a control total of $6,850,932.26. So this is what, you know this from, we can also look at the controls of other things here, but this is on here. And we can run field statistics on this if we wanted to. We might look and see, but what the information is about this particular set is. So this is all available to you. And this is a very basic test that we run with the extraction editor. Are there any questions about what we did here with the direct equation editor?
Did everybody get that? Did anybody get a little red box where it didn't pull up any exceptions?
Yeah, we had a few of those in the last class also.
Can you just show them what they would have done, like to rerun it just in case there was an exception?
If you have an error, let's say you didn't get this result here. Let's say you got a red box, okay? Like, instead of having a blue box here, you have a red box, there's no data. which means there might have been an error somewhere, okay? You hit this rerun, okay? The rerun is right under the file button on the top. This is a very nice feature of the new Idea 10, which is what you have in the system. So we take advantage of it. It means that, so if you have to, then you go back here, you pull up your regular extraction editor, click up this here to the equation editor, and then we can fix your error, okay? And then rerun the whole problem, and it'll come up with, the correct answer, okay? Because then you will have a problem. Trust me, everybody does. Okay? It never fails. Very easy to mistype something or have a bit of wrong logic or something. So it's a very handy function to go back and test that again. Are there any questions? Okay, so we're going to go back to accounts payable data again. You can close that out actually, so make it, so it doesn't clutter. Now we're going to have fun with this one that I call, it has multiple extraction tests all at one time, okay? But we're going to pull out 4 tables, we're going to create 4 tables at one time. Now ideally we could also put them in as one extraction, but I can show you how to do that later, but for right now we're going to test, we're going to use different types of tests with the date and the time and the texting. So according to the book here, we have some rules here that we want to test. They think that all payments to the payee name containing cash should be suspect. Okay, so looking at the data, we saw the names of cash here. Well, they're not showing as much over here right now, but we did see some names of cash, right? So that makes sense. All round sum payments, because sometimes when they're, usually payments aren't round sums. They're not like straight like $75,000 or $50,000. Usually there are other numbers. So if there are round sum numbers, maybe they were a larger invoice that was divided in half to avoid management oversight or management approval. So we have to question these types of transactions. They're typically associated with fraud and personal use sometimes in the past. All payments authorized by HMV, that particular employer, that particular manager. Perhaps there's some issues with that particular signature or the individual. Maybe they were just recently caught on some other kind of issue and they have to make sure that all the payments that person authorized are now examined. Maybe they were caught for fraud in another area of the department or something. We don't know. And then all payments made on a Sunday. So why would somebody write a check on a Sunday? Because they're not even working on Sundays. Like this also goes for like credit card payments or credit card purchases or any kind of expenses or purchases made on Sundays that should be work related. People typically aren't working on Sundays, right? But sometimes a vendor or a merchant might bill something on a Saturday because of a delayed billing for Friday, but not on a Sunday. Sundays are usually a 2-day lag, so Sundays are very questionable. So typically, a lot of the personal fraud or personal use type of tests we look for Sunday or Saturday transactions, weekend transactions, holiday transactions. So Christmas holiday usually are not a time when people go out shopping for work or writing checks for paying vendors. So we look for dates that are odd. In this case, we're looking at Sundays as part of the weekend test. It's generally part of what they call weekend tests. So on one hand, we're looking at the payee name test, which is very specific for this particular shop, and the round sum payments, which is a standard fraud test. And we're looking at also the payment authorization signature, HMV, and then the weekend test. So we're going to go back to the direct command up here. So we have our extraction box here. We're going to name the first extraction cash and payee. I'm going to put mine as 1 because I don't want the issue I had earlier. And then we're going to hit the equation box. We're going to get our friendly equation box again. Now this is where we're going to have fun here. So we're going to be, now remember I said we're going to be looking at all the names containing the word cash. So one of the basic commands is this one called Assini, which is supposed to take away the upper or lower case function of the character function. Okay? And it's not supposed to be case sensitive, but it turns out it is for some reason. And then we're also going to put in, after that, we want to test this for cash, so we're going to put in the quotation marks, right? And we're going to go down here and find we're going to have to type in the name cash, actually. This is where the issue came in earlier today. So all capitals, okay? Then after the quotation mark within the parentheses, you put a separator, okay? Then we're going to another function called strip, okay? Double click on that, okay? And within that, we're going to put in the variable payee, okay? So we have, this is what your command should look like. And we're going to check it, make sure it's valid. It says it's a valid equation.
If you can't see that well, look at page 133,
Yeah, so if you
step
can't see
number
it, it's very hard to
5.
see, and it's very small, and the colors are hard, make it hard to see. So you might want to look in your book. But again, like I said, you're hitting the first one is at the SCNI function, ISINI, okay? So you're looking for a text within a character field. So, and what we're looking for is this cash. And the character field is, in our payee field. So you can see here that this wouldn't work if we tried this on invoice date or pay date. It wouldn't work because those aren't characters. You have to make sure that you need only for characters. And again, like you go over here, this function here, and some of these pulled out by, so we could also go by character here. So we could minimize that, and we could look at all the functions of strictly go with character, or date and time, or matching functions, or conditional functions, or financial functions. And you also could identify custom functions. But so these are all the functions based on the data type. So this is okay. So this is what you should end up with in terms of your direct extraction box when you're done. Is everybody on the same page? Okay. Then we're going to hit OK. And you should have 20 transactions. Here, okay? Now we're going to go back, we're going to rerun this, okay? So now I want to show you, we're going to go do another extraction, okay, called round sum payments, right? Okay, so now we have what we have this in here. Now this is a little bit different. We're going to go right to the amount. This is the numeric test, okay?
Is everybody still following okay?
Everyone's okay so far? We're going to the mod function here, okay? And then 1,000 equals 0. We're going to test this again. It's a valid equation. So we're going to finish the rest of this test before we run our other extraction tests. The next one we're going to do, payment authorized by manager HMV. So we're going to call that authorized by HMV. Okay. So we're going to look at character function here.
Denise, can you start? Can you read that? So let's go back a little bit.
Okay.
You okay?
Yeah, if I need to slow down, let me know, okay? Just raise your hand or something, okay? So is it, when it's uppercase, okay, add upper. Okay. Then see, when the parentheses, we're going to put in this strip, okay, again. Then we have, within that, we're going to put in, so we're looking for authorization, so let's see if they're in here. Yes, it's auth, okay. Then outside of all the parentheses, put the equal. Now then we're going to put in the quotation marks. Now this is where you have to type in HMV uppercase.
Uppercase H, M, and
V.
V.
Just not, I'll have a, that's what it would look like. So at upper,
So again, if you can't see that too well, look at page 134, number 4.
yeah.
It shows you what the function
It
should
shows
look
you the
like.
function right there, right. We're gonna double check to make sure this is okay, so I make mistakes too. Resolved equation. So everybody should have this equation, right? It's okay. We're ready for the last test now. This is a Sunday date. So we'll do Sunday payments. And this one's a date and time one. So it goes by the days of the week. The idea is that every day of the week has like 1 through 7. So Sunday's a 1, Saturday's a 7. So we're testing for a Sunday, remember? That was one of the rules. So within the parentheses, then we're going to look at pay date. And then outside the parentheses, you're going to drop in equals. And then, of course, we'll type in 1. We don't need quotation marks or these things because it's not a character. It's a numeric, it's a date and time. So we check to make sure it's a valid equation, which it is. And here we go. So we have 4 tests here with cash and payee, with round sum payments, with authorized for H&B, with Sunday payments. These are all tests that the store or the client has said that are, indicative control tests that, we would use to see whether there's questionable transactions in these areas. Okay? They may be different for every client's difference, but this is what's needed about the equation editor. This is where you make these audit tests very personal for your client, for the business you're working for. For example, maybe we want to change payee to a different name, so it could be, instead of cash, it could be another name. Or, we could make the Sunday payment day, we could make it a Saturday payment, we could make it a holiday. So there's another function of date and time, we can test actual dates. So this is how this looks. We're going to hit OK. And now we're going to have, on the side you can see that we have the authorization B here, right? That's one of these are all the transactions authorized by this individual. And you can see there are different types of formats. Some that have separators, some don't. But they pulled up all of them. So we have all the transactions by that particular manager. We have round sum of payments here. Interesting to see we have quite a few 75,000 and a couple of zeros, which is rather interesting. And some of these are by HMV. So this this area here has got 2 control issues, right? Round numbers and HMV. And Sunday payments. We'll look at these now. Okay, so let's see if we have anything here well, we have some by HMV, right? And I'm sure there might be some 75,000 in there, but, so anyway, so we have so HMV's got some violations in multiple areas, right?
So the significance of that, because just to tie back, so maybe for HMV, this manager,
Yeah.
maybe as a result of the auditors going through their understanding of internal controls, maybe they noticed that this person had, improper segregation. There wasn't an effective segregation of duties, that they were performing incompatible functions. And so maybe what the auditor wants to do is, well, let's look at the transactions that this person authorized to see if there are any anomalies with respect to those transactions. So that might be a reason that you would highlight a particular manager. Something came up in maybe your risk assessment that suggested that you want to look at these cases or this manager further.
So what you could do then is like, even this set here, we could pull up a direct, and make another test. We could go pull up the equation editor and test for this one here, saying, let's say HMV, right? HMV authorization, right? Okay, so we could do that. right? So we can pull out all the ones where authorization equals, right? Valid. Okay, so this is a way we can prune down the data set to look at all the transactions from that particular person, right? See, now we have just his transactions, or her transactions. And these are ones that are, that actually were Sundays too. So it's very interesting how and actually then we could go back, if you wanted to, if you saw, okay, there's certain transactions with their multiple violations, we could go back to Rerun, and actually, let me go back here. Go back to one of the original data sets here, we'll go back to this one here, we can hit Rerun, and any of these here we could probably add in and make them like multiple tests at one time. So you're extracting all the transactions that are Sundays, that are round numbers, or HNV, they're all at one time, and they're all in one data set, instead of having to look at these separately. But this exercise is looking at separately. But ideally, you should be able to go into this one here, and if you want to, like by using the add function, you can put and we can put another stipulation, another one even. So you can put multiple strings of extraction rules and put it all in one data set. If you want to really get focused on it.
So let's start with like Sunday.
Okay, yeah. So we're going to go to the Sunday days of the week, right? So, pay date. Equals 1. Okay, so let's see, this should work, right? Solid equation. So we're looking to see whether payee is cash and whether it was on a Sunday, right? This all will be a one test. We're going to name this, actually we cash a payee on Sunday. I'll just leave it that way for right now.
And of course, just like with Excel, the more you use the function keys, the more you start to memorize what functions are
Yeah,
and
exactly.
the abbreviation. So you just have to get used to it like you do with Excel.
Yeah. So over time, certain tests would do more than others. Like the day of the week, the weekend tests are very standard tests in auditing, particularly with fraud work. So you're going to get used to that test the days of the week. You'll get used to the round of duplicate testing. You'll get used to gap detection. You'll get used to the authorization test, for example, like we're doing with authorization 8 by HMV. So they're very basic tests you'll get familiar with over time. So there's 2 transactions, right? So see now that looks a lot better than the earlier one, right? So we already know there's 2 violations here, where the Sunday, yeah, they're not round amounts, but they do have, they're interesting because they're authorized by HMV. The cash, so they're cash and they're on Sunday. Okay, with the cash in the name and they're on Sunday.
Then here's another thing, when you're looking at this, right? What looks unusual to you? Looking at these 2 transactions, can you highlight anything that's unusual?
Pay is the same.
Okay, and so you could have multiple, you would expect to have multiple payments too. And we have already established that cash might be a problem. But what else is unusual?
Yes.
The difference in the difference in the amounts.
But you might have different amounts. You would be a little bit more concerned if the amounts were actually the same every time, right? Unless it was a contract or a rent. Something else is right there. So it looks like the same payee, right? Agreed?
The spelling is different.
Well, no, it's an uppercase.
Upper lowercase, right.
Same. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, if that's the case, then why is the supplier number different?
Right.
But if it's the same payee, then that's your vendor number. Your supplier number should be
Same, right.
consistent. It doesn't change because of a different day or different transaction. but you see the different supplier numbers. So that's the point of this, right? The point of, to try to pick that out, looking at 999 transactions or suppliers, accounts payable transactions, is really difficult to do. So you start to, you drill down on the data to try to identify anomalies. And there are two different authors, different people authorizing the transaction. Maybe one of those transactions are actually valid and another one may not be.
Exactly.
But at a minimum, you should not have this different supplier numbers for the same supplier.
And I was going to say, it has quite a few transactions like that, where we have the same supplier name, different supply numbers, and vice versa. One supplier number with different names, different payee names. So it's very unusual type of data. It's obviously manufactured for this example, but.
So it makes it easier to examine the data. So you would likely pick out that you would see, I saw that immediately, and I haven't done this test before, right? You would likely, that would jump out at you. It could be an error, but maybe not, but it's a red flag.
Right. But the supply number is a big question. I mean, why would there be the same payee name like that? It could be valid. Maybe there's two companies with the exact same name. We don't know. But it's hard to imagine. I mean, something would have some other slight difference in the name, I would think. Because they both incorporate. So it's like, I don't know how they would be different. So I mean, what we saw, this is something we did on our own here, based on we sort of deviate from the workbook here, because the workbook resolves still. This data set here is pretty big still, Well, 20, but we were able to narrow it down further to see what the issues were with some of them were on Sunday. So that's how we were able to focus down a little bit more on the data. So we're testing 20 transactions in addition to all the other transactions we have to look at. So we figured out maybe ones that are on Sunday might be more likely to be personal use because of the day or the week. Generally speaking, the greater the number of control violations or rule violations or issues with a particular transaction, more likely it could be personal use or some other errors involved. So we want to try and focus on this transaction and more potential for error. And I must admit that we're using the word fraud very loosely because in auditing, usually what you find is errors initially or misstatements, and then trying to prove that they're fraud is usually not within your capacity as an auditor. What you do is do all the research behind it and then turn it over to another, like forensic accounting or forensic auditing or HR, depending on the company or the situation. And they're the ones that determine fraud. Fraud is about proving intent to deceive. So that's a little difficult. But if it's obviously personal use or it's a personal check or one of these vendors is an employee address, it turns out, but that's another check which we don't do in this exercise, but we could if the address matches. For example, another standard test in payable is checking the address of the payable vendors to employee addresses, for example. There should never be a similarity, or PO boxes, another one. Addresses of PO boxes for delivery of checks instead of an actual address is a big red flag also.
So, and then if you look at this again, you see that this supplier number W007, there's several suppliers, different payees with the same supplier number. And they're all, and this is all that you found in cash, where you have cash in the payee.
Yeah.
So even if you thought it was okay to have cash in there, there's clearly some fraud. It appears that there's some fraudulent transaction associated with it. And HMP is on a number of these as the authorized.
Yes.
And VST, maybe they're polluting.
Yeah, so maybe it's a case of Wells Fargo, right? But all the employees are trying to make up vendor accounts, right? Yes.
I was just going to, with your discussion of fraud versus error, one of the heads of internal audit was in recently for one of our recruiting companies.
Yeah.
And he said he's been having tremendous success with this, with duplicate payments.
Oh, yeah. Because a lot of times, duplicate payments are ways to hide transactions below the threshold.
Mm-hmm.
But
or they just have to have internal controls.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, like we were talking about Wells Fargo in the previous class, and that's a perfect current audit example because in 2011 they've been manufacturing these big accounts, And the question, and internal control testing was going back to the department head instead of like to a separate governance in the company. And that's like a big red flag, right? And I'm really shocked that the auditors didn't note that for 5 or 6 years. It's amazing.
Well, but it depends on how, I don't know if they said that the auditors didn't know that.
Well, they're not talking about auditors yet.
Well, right, so, and it could be how risky they saw that. Like, they might not have, because they might have written it up in a management. And I'm not saying that what they did was right. I'm just saying it depends on how much risk they placed on the fact that those reports did not go to an independent company, right? And so if they didn't highlight it as being high risk, they wouldn't have taken action. And then, or they just missed it. So it's how skeptical were they, right?
Exactly.
So they could have identified, you guys talked about skepticism already? So the important thing about
Every class.
skepticism.
Every class we talk about it.
Judgment, right?
So the important thing about skepticism is that once you are skeptical of something, that you act on it. Right? So it's not enough to just say, oh yeah, this is skeptical, but then you don't act on it. Because that to me is the same as not being skeptical, because you didn't act on it. So we don't know. So until we get more evidence, we don't know if the auditors were skeptical enough or they didn't act on their skepticism.
Exactly. I'm very curious to find out.
Yeah.
Because, they wrote, this big 4 firm, they wrote it off all these years. They gave unqualified internal control opinions, So the question is why did they see this? Maybe they didn't notice that there were so many accounts, or there was big.
I don't know, but a red flag. You already discussed risk, right? A red flag would have been the culture, right? So that culture existed. That there was a high level of emphasis on generating revenue and profit, right? So that creates tone and top, but also it creates a higher inherent risk environment when you have that kind of.
Yeah. So I think that overall, then I guess the question of their auditors would, can they notice this on the engagement or not, whether they can pay attention to the overall environment of the firm and what they're emphasizing over other things, or is it all stuck under the rug when they come in and do the audit?
So let's go.
Yeah, let's go on.
No, but I just want, because you brought up Wells Fargo, how might they, we talked about this in other how they might have.
Well, that goes under the Benchmark test too.
Okay.
But basically, when we were thinking how could the auditors have found that out?
Using
idea. One way is to be looking to see the number of, a lot of the clients are calling back and say, well, I didn't authorize this account, and they're trying to have them closed off. So maybe you have an unusual spike in number of closed accounts that show up in data someplace. Or if you're doing data on satisfaction reports, let's say the customers are calling complaining. Sometimes you have call center reports that are also part of data. Or it could have also been the number of clients who are suddenly disqualified from loans because of bad credit ratings. So a lot of them were impacted in a bad way in their credit rating, or their credit score, because of they didn't know these accounts existed. And so they didn't pay the yearly annual fees or anything, and then they were being dinged on it. So, a lot of times I think they didn't receive the bills in the mail. So, I think there are some tests you can run on it, but I'm not sure how much would be available to auditors unless they really ask for it.
Well, what you described in the test that you described is a good example of using non-accounting information to make inferences about potential issues that impact the financial statements.
Right.
Because the customer satisfaction is not an accounting, we don't capture that anywhere, right?
No.
In our accounting data. But it's something that we could use possibly to make inferences.
So let's get back to our main accounts payable data. Click on the top here because we need to, I want to show you the Benford's test. I'm not crazy about Benford's test myself. It's basically the idea that numbers have, by a statistician, and the idea is that most numbers fall within a statistical test or range within 1s and 0s. When they fall out of that range, that can be problematic. And it looks very similar to what we saw with the stratification. But it is handy to see sort of get an idea at a high level where you might just start looking at the data. Right. For outliers. So we're going to pull up the Benford's law here. Okay, so we're going to analyze. A lot of this is pre-filled for you, an idea that comes up automatically. So when we look at positive values, we're going to show boundaries and mean absolute deviation. We're going to analyze the amount field. We're looking at all the different digit tests here. I'm calling it Benford 2, but you can call it anything else, and I'm calling it Benford 2 because I have multiple tests in my system right now. But in one way to differentiate your tests is if you're going to do this multiple times, so add different numbers on the end, so that different data sets. Okay, so we hit OK. There's this here.
Right, I think you had to set the limit to 999.
Yeah.
The minimum, so if you have to go under advanced.
Yeah, we go here, hit that to 999, okay? That's our data, okay? So now we go to OK. And here's our results. So we have here, we have an upper bound of what we expect to be reasonable in terms of the number range for that particular strat or digit sequence, and then the lower bound. So the idea is that most of the transactions, we're not too worried about the ones that are below the bound, but the ones that are above the bound are more concerned. So we can see some of these are lying outside the bound. So we may like to look at these kind of transactions. So we can display the records, or we can extract them, like we can pull up another data set. This is what the records look like that fall in strata 7, for example. So these are all problematic. Some of these characters look very similar, right? We have our usual cache characters here. So there are some duplication in our results here. We have to see the same players, the same transactions showing the different types of tests. So let's give us a good idea as audited by now that we may have a problem on our hands here with this data. I don't want to spend too much time on this because we have a lot of stuff to cover in 15 minutes. Now to go real quickly to, we're going to go back to accounts payable and the data. Close this out here. So we're back to the data set. And I'll give you an idea of that's what the Benford's law is. Another way to look at it is like a high-level view of what data you're going to look at more carefully. We discussed the idea of sampling. Now, as you can see, IDEA is a very powerful instrument. Now, you have an educational version which has limits on terms of number of fields and number of rows it can deal with, but IDEA can deal with millions of rows, ideally. It can work with large data sets. There's no constraints. It's way beyond the capacity of Excel. However, for our purposes, it's reduced or limited because it's an educational free version. But so in many cases, when you go to an audit or decide internally, you can analyze all the data. You can do testing on all the data set, right? But still, according to audit standards, you can't do that. You can't use the results of that in your audit. You have to go back and sample. You have to follow the regulations. The regulations require you sample, unless there's some stipulations where it's not necessarily required, but generally speaking, most auditors on the engagement will sample just to be on the safe side. So the big issue in the external auditing field is whether it's feasible economically for them to run tests like this, 100% test, even though IDEA does it very simply, and also have to run a sample. I bring this up because a big question everybody has is why aren't auditors doing more testing? Why aren't they using these type of tools in the engagement more often? Because of the sampling requirement. We still have to pull out samples even when we have these kind of tools, which I think the PCOB is starting to look at. Hopefully they'll start questioning that. But there's some cases where the standards will allow, they don't call it sampling. So even if we had pulled out all those extractions, like we did a minute ago, those aren't considered to be samples by the standards. With the regulations, it won't be called a sample. So we're going to do first a random sample, which I think, this is like a very basic one. It's where you don't really know a lot about the data, but it's just pull out a sample. So let's say 20 records, okay? The random number seed is, like I have a number here of 8969, but you probably have different numbers, right? You want to note that number or save it, or if you want to rerun it, the sample with a number of different number of records, then you would save that sample number, that number seed, and it would come up with the same result plus the additional numbers. You can start with the record number anywhere you want, and fit 1 to 999. Okay, I'm going to call this random sample. I'm going to do 10 here because of my system here. Okay, so these are my samples here. And they're completely random or arbitrary, and then yours will look different.
And these are items that you would perform further testing.
Right. The idea is that these, okay, so this is how a lot of the auditors will conduct their tests and engagement. It's like, even if it's like a low risk area, where they're not too worried about having to focus on one or two areas. So this is like a random sample. Then we'll go back to accounts payable again.
So Denise, with this, right, because we performed other tests where we knew that there was some problems, let's say, for example, cash and payee,
Yeah.
and the auditor might decide that they want to look at those transactions separately 100%, and you can exclude those transactions from your accounts payable file, right? And then just run your sample and say, okay, we're going to look at all transactions that have cash and payee, then we're going to look at a random sample of the remaining transactions. Then you would just run your random sample on the reduced file.
Yeah, right. So like another way we could look at it, we can also do random sampling on accounts we could stratify the data, so we're looking at samples within every strata, for example. So again, we're using a stratification test here, and assuming that we have to do a numeric stratification. So again, what I did here, just to repeat it, I went to other. So under other categories, systematic, we've stratified random, so that's what we want to look at. So we have amount, we'll do a total on its amount, very similar process like we did before. Let's see here. We have to select the sample size. Clarification 7, okay. Okay. So here's sample size. We select the sample size. So let's say we want to do. Remember that we had some that were here. We have 2 here. So I want to look at all those 2, right? We had some before. I know. Let's see here. The zeros here. This one here we want to look at maybe. We're not too interested in these ones, right? Is it 0? 10. Okay.
I'm a risk adverse auditor.
Okay. Let's do 5. Whatever number you feel like putting in, right? So this is the number of sample to pull out of each strata, okay? I mean, it could be whatever you feel like. This is where your judgment comes into play, right? And so, obviously there's no records here, you have to look for samples, right? So then, file name, we're going to call this 8 because so you can file name whatever you want, okay? Because we're ad-libbing right now. This is on the book, okay? So you know. But it is in the help section under sample, under the audit guide, and there's samples. So if you wanted to get this more directly, it'll be under that help directory. So here's our sample. And this is more, this sample is more focused, right? So it's a way of getting around the standards, so to speak. Okay, that's what I like about it. Because this way, I mean,
I would try to get around the standards.
you hear me say that, right? But it is, I mean, in a sense, you're still sampling.
To creatively operate within the bounds of the standard.
Yes, there we go, yes. I stand corrected. You're being creative, you're creatively operating within the bounds of the standards. Right. So we are sampling, right? But it's actually more specific. We've decided, well, we could focus more on the transactions that we think are more problematic based on other tests. So actually, in some ways, you can use the idea tests that are more specific, like the extraction tests, and be more focused on your sample and be more efficient and effective as an auditor. Because auditing is all about being efficient, your time and the engagement funds and budget, and also effective. You want to be able to find misstatements and errors where they exist. You don't want to have trouble saying that you release an unqualified opinion when it's perfectly qualified or some other problem. So I think we've covered enough today, I think.
Did you
Do you just want to do duplicate
Oh, yeah, we'll
payments?
duplicates real quickly, okay. I'm sorry. That's also, do you remember what page this is in? We'll go on to duplicates real quickly. Accounts payable, again, the data, right?
It's around
duplicates are
one forty-seven,
Yeah,
so yours might be around 144 or 5.
because here we are, duplicate key, okay, and again, we're in analysis tab up here, under explore, duplicate key, we're gonna detect, so we're gonna pull them out, okay? We're gonna output duplicate records, and we have to define our key. So supplier number is 1, okay, and we're gonna make it ascending. The other one here, I think they said in the book is amount. Okay, so it makes sense, we're checking for the supply number and the amount of the check. And that could be descending or ascending, it doesn't matter. Okay. So we're okay. And we're gonna call this file name, whatever you wanna call it, I'm just gonna call it my name here. The book they asked me to call it duplicate payments, okay? And here's our duplicates. We have, they're by amount and also by supply number. But what's so interesting about this? What stands out to you as being an issue? Very similar to the question we asked you before. Yes.
All those different, they all have the same supply number, even though they have different names.
Well, the M100, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so isn't it odd that 3 different names, the same supply number? And look at and the invoices are odd too, they don't match. The other, like, it looks like Nellie Dunn is probably legitimate, but we don't know for sure. Could be duplicate payment, but these other ones here are very suspicious.
Right, because there's no, usually you'll have, not that the sequence of the invoices will, you'll have the same, a sequence, right? You won't
Right.
have that because you're in, you know, a supplier is issuing invoices to a multitude of clients.
But they're not the same though.
But they don't make sense. You know, one is UP, another is CS, and then another is T5. You know, it doesn't, their invoice format seems to be very unusual. They're not consistent format.
Now, what we should look at, and I think it's another data set here, is addresses, because
But
in
also,
offline,
listen, before you go back, the 75,000, again, those are round numbers.
Right.
And unless, first of all, MCash is the problem.
Right.
But unless it's a contract or rental payments or something that would say you have a fixed payment amount every single month, why is unusual that you would have a
Exactly.
vendor where you're paying them the same amount every month.
and the 3 different names. Now,
Right.
we could also look under, we weren't able to join the databases here, but we put authorized supplier address. We can also look to see what the story of these 3 payees here, they should have different, if they have the same address, maybe there's something to look into, but if they're different addresses and the same supplier number, then we got a problem. Okay? And they're different names, so I mean that's another test you would run. You would extract the addresses from another data set.
So Nellie Dunn looks like a real duplicate payment.
Yeah.
Because if you.
The number is the
Right,
same, the invoice number is the same.
Invoice number is the same, same supplier number, and you look at the dates, they're not that far apart, the
Right.
amount is the same. So it's probably and then you have 2 different people authorizing them, so.
Yeah. But this other one here, one of them is by HMV too. It's like, who this person is. So I mean that's a duplicate test, a very basic one, but you could also make it, test more than 2 items. You could go by date too. Or like say you want to do like 2-way or 3-way duplicate tests. You could test. We get very specific. We could do specific extractions and the equation editor too.
So one Nellie Dunn is, probably more an error, right?
Right.
As opposed to, or a lack of internal controls around the payment process, right? But the first 3 seem to be more indicative of fraud. It seems to be a higher risk of fraudulent transactions.
Yeah, I think so too. Particularly there's a weirdness about the invoice numbers. I mean, not matching at all across the vendors, and like I would want to do the address test right away for sure. Any questions about any of the tests we did today? I would recommend that you keep on working on this book here. I know that you're doing accounts receivable testing, I believe. That's another special project that your professor has concocted for you.
With it.
Yeah. But I would probably, this is very, very explanatory. If you follow the directions carefully, you'll be okay. And like I said, that help index is very helpful, particularly for sampling or any of the functions you want to have questions about. The idea is very intuitive. It's based off, it's very close to Excel in terms of its coding. So if you're familiar with Excel or VBA, then you'll have no problem navigating around the back end of the idea as well.
Well, thank you to our guests today.
Thank you.